Ionic out yet. My name is Troy Miles. The name of my talk is AngularJS on mobile with Ionic framework, or web to mobile app in 7 steps. Notice I didn't say easy steps, I said 7 steps. Just really quickly about me, my name is Troy Miles. I've been doing software for 35 years. That's not a typo. Ask my 25-year-old daughter. The last 8 years, I've been at Kelly Blue Book in Southern California. My handle is the Rock Encoder. My email, my actual email address is rockencoder@gmail.com. And that email address travels. I have gotten emails all the way from India and Pakistan. We all know the web is cool now. It wasn't when we first started out. I started doing real heavy web development back in 2006, and it sucked. It was not fun. Half my time, well, let's be honest, like 90% of my time was trying to figure out why it worked on Firefox, but it didn't work on IE. And back and forth, and that was not fun stuff to do, where you're just going, for the love of God, why won't this work in IE6? Why does it work in 7 but not 6? Why does it work in 6 but not 7? And just playing with this stupid code. But since then, here we are in 2015, and we have libraries like jQuery and underscore. We have frameworks like Angular, and there's also other ones, you know, Ember and Backbone. There's testing frameworks like Jasmine, Mocha, QUnit. There's workflow stuff like Gulp and Grunt, and Node and Bower for packaging stuff up. In other words, the web is fun also. And that's one of the things I like to tell people about this job. If you're not actually having fun doing it, you're doing something wrong. Because every day, all across the world, there are people that crawl into holes, go down a mile deep, and dig coal out. Where most of us are in air-conditioned offices, listening to music, sipping coffee, latte, energy drinks, or whatever your preferred beverage is, and just coding away. And it's great. However, mobile looks cool too. And, you know, there are billions of smartphones out there now, billions of them. It seems like everybody you know has one. A few months ago, I was actually at a grocery store, and 2 elderly ladies were arguing over which was better, Android or iPhone. And I just smiled. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This is the greatest day of my life to hear that we've got that level of market penetration and market awareness, that 2 ladies who you didn't even think would know what a smartphone is are arguing really good points about which one's better. And of course, you know, every year new phones come out. They've got great features. And one of the things that's, you know, and if you're a fan of Windows Phone or a BlackBerry or one of those other things, please, 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 don't think that I'm throwing hate on you. I'm just putting this fact out here. I didn't make the fact, but the market's divided up between Android and iOS right now. 96.3% of the market. So if you could just do your app on those 2 devices, you could potentially reach 96% of the people with smartphones. That's a pretty huge number. However, there is a dark side of mobile development. I'm one of those few crazy idiots that can't seem to figure out a good reason to tear himself away from his computer. Because while other people like to watch TV, I like to watch YouTube videos about programming. So I know how to do native development, both for Android and iOS and even Windows Phone. And Objective-C was a great language back in, 1981 when it was invented? And people can talk about JavaScript being a painful language, but holy cow, that is a whole different trip. And it's not fun. Swift looks promising. It's got a lot of great stuff to it. Java is Java. Let's just leave it there. And, you know, even if you know the languages, it's not the language that's the hard part. It's the frameworks. You've got to learn a few dozen frameworks on iOS in order to make an app. You got to learn a few dozen more in Android in order to make an app. You can't just, oh, I know Java. I'm going to go ahead and write myself a mobile app, have millions of downloads, retire early. Not going to happen. Also, creating a UI. It's gotten better on Android. I mean, iOS, it's always been easier than Android just because of Interface Builder, but Android still has some pain points there. And one of the biggest pain points is, I'm not a UI person. Teaching my UI person to use the tools on Android is painful. And even if you develop, you go through all the work, you learn all the frameworks, you've mastered all that grunty details of developing, say, an iOS app, it does not help you in the least to develop an Android app at all. They share nothing in common. They could not be more different in their paradigms that they use. So you've got no cross-platformness that as web developers love. You don't think about whether your app is running on a PC or a Mac or a Linux box. If it's in Angular, you just assume it works. Unless, of course, somebody's using IE8. Now, mind you, you could take an AngularJS app, put it onto a Cordova, which is sometimes pronounced PhoneGap, and you can push something out. You could actually get it to run. It will work. And so the question is, well, why do you need Ionic if that's the case? Well, the answer is this right here. And if that's not a good enough rendition, let's do... So here's my little contacts app. This is running using Bootstrap. It doesn't really do a lot. It's just yet another kind of contacts sort of thing. If you drill down into it, you get this. But the problem is, every user in the world is going to know that that's not an iOS app, that that's not an Android app, that it's something different. If you're doing some in-house, internal, enterprise app, it may not matter. You might have somebody just saying, just get it out quick, just get it out quick, just get it out quick. That's all we want. And, you could get that to work, and everybody might be happy. But if you put that in the App Store, let me explain something to you if you don't know it already. The internet is not a kind place. It's not, well, I'm going to give him 3 stars because he tried really hard. That's not how it works. They either A, love you, or B, hate you. And there's no in-betweens. Nobody goes, I'm going to give him 2 stars or 3 stars. No, they go, 1 star. This app sucked. Yeah, it did everything that it said that it would do, and its performance is great, and it works fine, but it looks horrible, 1 star. And that's what's going to happen to you, and you don't want that to happen to you. You'll need all kinds of therapy. You'll be sitting on a couch, talking to somebody holding a yellow notepad, writing all these things down for years. You don't want the 1-star review. So what I'm going to show you is a little bit different than what Josh just talked about. We're going to go a different way. We're going to say, hey, look, we already have an app. We have a website that works really well that we think would be great for mobile because we did everything like we should have did. We got a RESTful back page. We got everything that we need in it. Now, mind you, I'm not going to do something full-blown. It's going to be stripped down so that I can fit it into a 25-minute bite-sized chunk. But hopefully, all of us developers, and one of the things that I love about, another thing that I love about this job, in case you can't figure it out, I do love my job. Something my brother told me. My brother's the store manager at a CVS. And he said, you are so lucky. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, you get to deal with smart people all the time. I work at a CVS that's open 24 hours a day. Everybody needs to go to a drugstore at some point in their life. So you get really, really smart people, really, really not smart people, people that are drunk, people that are, so you get all these weird questions, whereas you may not agree with your coworker, but just the fact that they can do the job, the same job you're doing, means that they're smart. It also means that you're smart, so don't take anything from them. And so we're going to, take this little stripped-down program. We're going to see what it's like to convert it really, really quickly. I'm not going to actually code anything up because I don't type that fast. But I'll switch back and forth between the web version and the Ionic version to get you a little idea of what it feels like to go from one to the other. So the very first thing that you're going to do with Ionic is you're going to try to choose your UI. So Ionic out of the box comes with more templates than I have listed here because they've been really busy. Apparently Josh doesn't take very many breaks either, and they've added more, but the three main ones that get talked about in their documentation are blank, which basically means, hey, you're going to figure out how you want this thing to look. Tab, which is a familiar tab icons at the bottom, or if you're on Android, at the top of the page. Or side menu, which is that sort of Facebook-y slide-out thing. And you can also, choose a theme and a color and do all that other stuff. If you're good with CSS, which I am not, you can make your app, with your corporate branded colors so that everything is fine. So once you do that, first, it probably might be nice if I did this. So here is the app. It doesn't do hardly anything. It's got an about page. It's got a contact page because we like to keep track of where all of our Avengers are at any given time. We can go through in here and edit them and change them and update them. And we can see that the changes are being posted back and forth. And we can add new ones. So that we can keep adding more stuff. So it's nothing earth-shattering, nothing really difficult to wrap your head around. And it's like day one or day two of any actual app that you're really going to build and put together. But like I said, the idea here is just to get an idea of what it's like to take something like this. And of course, this is bootstrap. So if I shrink this thing down, it kind of goes responsive on us. And now my menus are in this pop-down thing that we saw in the iOS simulator. So once you've chosen your theme and your color, your next step is going to be to copy all your base code. So your services and your controllers should go fairly, if you've done things the way Angular suggests, such as not put UI code in your controllers. Of course, none of us do that. And kept your code really clean and separated. Your services and your controllers should mainly go untouched from one to the other. Now, there might be some slight things that you might need to change, but for the most part, you shouldn't need to change those things. So if we take a look here, so here is the, excuse me while I fumble for a second. Here is, we have just this one service. It is using local storage because I never know what network's going to be like at a talk. So I always make sure that I can run everything without network. And these are just defaults. And what it's doing is it's putting everything in the local storage. And if it doesn't have anything in local storage, it puts the default in there. Well, guess what? When I take this whole thing and stick it over into Ionic, I don't have to change anything. Nothing in this services layer changes. If this is an HTTP request, nothing would have to change there either. All that code that you've got, that you've fought hard to make work right, at that base level should still work. So in the actual app, in the web-based app, what I'm using is ng-route. I know a lot of us are already using UI router. If you're using UI router, holy cow, you're like, instead of being like, 90% of the way to mobile, you're like 94% of the way to mobile. So it's going to save you some time, but if not, you're going to have to switch UI router to ng-route. Now in this app, I'm just using like the lowest common denominator of functionality, so I'm only really, actually I take that back. There's a couple of places where I do use states instead of routes, but so in the, let me get rid of this guy. If we take a look at my routes, here they are as a ng-route router, ng-route. And you notice that for the most part, it's mainly just a little bit of semantical change as we switch over to the routes here using UI router. So there's a little bit of change because there's a state instead of a view. But for the most part, and because I'm using the tab, I have to take that into account. This is probably the most work that you would do on such a simple app, is just getting your routes to work correctly. And my normal thing right there when I have to do something like this is that I will just set up mocks of what the pages are going to look like, just so that I know that the route, as I switch routes, either hitting them from the URL or actually clicking them, that I'm getting from that one route to the next, and that's all working just fine. So once we got our routes done, now the last hard part's going to be just getting your views right. There's a lot of things that are very similar in Angular and the way that Bootstrap does things and the way that Ionic does things. They're very similar as far as like how they divide up a page and you want to do rows and columns and stuff like that. But you have to change a lot of the classes to get things to look right. So in our case, what we've done is, if we take a look, say for instance, this is just all the stuff that goes into Bootstrap to do the form for when I'm adding a new contact into the set. It's similar. Here, this is Ionic, and this here is Bootstrap. So you get lots of these. In this case, I've got lots of form grouping. Probably somebody with a better designer feel could do this in less steps and make it look way better. However, with Ionic, I get to make it look good without really doing a lot of work, and I really appreciate that. And in this case, let's just take a quick look and see what this thing looks like. Oops. So right now I'm just, what the heck? Oh, crap. That was nice. But that shouldn't matter. Hold on. Luckily, there is an Ionic serve command, and I should be able to run local serve and so when we take a look at, here's our actual list of guys. If we come in here and we scroll down, now here's what it looks like, the Ionic version of it. This is very iOS-ish. It'll look more, if I was to run this on an Android device, it would look more Android-ish. And what's really nice is I didn't have to think through all these different things about how to get this to look right. If I just follow the documentation, and Josh is right, they do have really good documentation. Even somebody that does not have a good choice of how to line things up and whatever, I usually just put stuff up on the page, and then luckily I know people that are really good designers and make my stuff look really good. But that looks pretty decent. And you can see here that we have Can you guys hear me? Oh, now I'm back. Okay, good. I was going to say, because I hate to say this part, one of the reasons why my nickname is Rock Encoder is because once upon a time I used to play rock guitar and sometimes sing if the audience was drunk enough. But my voice will carry across the room usually. So either way, that's getting the views right, and that's not that difficult to get the views so that they look good. Like I said, this is a really simple, stupid app, but it looks the same way as most iOS apps look like, that are sort of that form-based, drill down into things, which is like 90% of all business apps. Okay, continuing along, that's step 4. Step number 5 is, you want to add some device capabilities, location, camera, audio, etc. I'm not going to do that here, but luckily there's NG Cordova so that you can bind to all the stuff that the device actually has to offer to make it different and differentiate it from its web-based cousin. 6 is resources. Resources are one of those things that you don't think about till the deadline's creeping up for you to deliver this app, and then somebody goes, oh yeah, have you done the icons? Have you done the splash page? And you go, I'm saving that for last. It's not a big deal. And then you find out, oh, in iOS, there's like, I don't know, a constantly incrementing number of icon file sizes, a constantly incrementing number of splash page sizes. And you got to do one for when it's in portrait, one for it's in landscape. Unless you're on iOS 6, then you can use a task board to do it in as though it's part of the page. And it's either way, it's a big pain in the butt. But luckily, and I guess we actually do have to take our hats off to Josh, because one of the command line tools that they added was resources, and you just give it a really big image, one for your icon, one for your splash page, and it will take that big image, cut and crop and scale it, and do a fairly decent job of it, and generate all the different sizes that you need for both Android and iOS. That is the biggest pain in the ass saver that I can think of, because it's stupid and painful to have to do this. At some point, mobile device manufacturers are going to find out about SVG or some other scalable sort of thing and make us stop having to do this. But luckily, we do have the resources, and it'll generate all that stuff for you. Finally, you get to step number 7. Now, step number 7, depending on how you have your machine set up, is either really painful if you're doing it by yourself, or it's really, easy. If you've already been developing mobile apps, getting everything to package up and create an APK or an IPA file is pretty easy. If you're just learning how to do this, welcome to Wonderland. It's never as easy as you think. You can package what you generate in Ionic. You can use the platform files to generate your iOS and your Android app, or you can use the Ionic build service and let them do all the grunty work for you. And then once you get that done, your next step is to, of course, bask in glory. At some point, if you wanted to take this stuff further, I would say try it on something that you've actually done on a real app. Try getting it to all work from a single code base, because having multiple copies of my services and my controllers, of course, violates the don't repeat yourself thing, and you're setting yourself up for trouble. Of course, I don't have any unit tests. Even though I tell everybody that they're really good to have unit tests, I never demo them. Here's a bunch of resources. Here's the links to the slide, and all 3 versions of this little app that I did. I did one that's just Context-ng, which is just it running in Angular on the web. Context Cordova, running in just Cordova without Ionic. And then finally Contacts, which is it running in Ionic. And the summary is that, Ionic is built on top of Angular and Cordova. Going from web to mobile is relatively straightforward. I'm not going to say easy, because it's not. You're not going to have... Unfortunately, you're not going to get an app that looks like this, and your boss is going to say, yeah, we need you to convert this. Take yourself a lot of time. But with Ionic, mobile envy is over for Angular developers. You can do this. It's not that hard. You can take your web stuff, and you're 90% of the way to mobile right now. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my talk.